Vigilante Williamson here with a very simple question, and that's what's going to happen with Mike Tomlin and the Pittsburgh Steelers. I'm recording this a few hours after the 14-28 loss by the Steelers to the Ravens at Baltimore. It was kind of a blowout of a game. I didn't even watch the whole game. I didn't watch the second half, to be honest. It just felt like a blowout. And I've been thinking about this video for a while. In fact, I could have made this video last year. I don't think I did on my other channel or this one. But in any event, though Mike Tomlin has been one of the better coaches in NFL history, and that is not an exaggeration. I'm not going to glaze the guy. I'm going to be honest, but that's just the fact. And I'll get into some of the people who think he's mediocre or average. What he's did in Pittsburgh, that's nonsense, but I'll get into that later. But he's been one of the better coaches in NFL history. I think no losing record since he's been the head coach of Pittsburgh. Went into the playoffs more often than not. I think most of the time, I think they only missed it like twice, something like that. I have going off the top. I'm not looking at stats. I just know that he gets to the playoffs more often than he doesn't. A lot more often than he doesn't, but hasn't won a playoff game since I think 2016. That's getting almost 10 years now. So that's as much of the story as anything. So two things can be true, right? It can be time to move on. It can be time for a change, and Mike Tomlin can be a great coach. Because I think both of those things are true. That's why I said I could have made this video last year. I would compare what Tomlin's going through similar to somebody who coached in the same state, Andy Reid, who was a coach of Philadelphia for a long time, and he eventually moved on. I can't remember if he got fired or quit or both, or was it mutual. It's been a while, again, going off the top, but Andy Reid was the coach of the Eagles for a while. He left and eventually became the coach of Kansas City. Obviously, Kansas City is the most dominant team right now, going for their three-peat. He's won multiple championships in Kansas City. And even the Eagles, after a rebuild and after a lot of drama, and we'll get into that later when I talk about the Pittsburgh fans, but they even got a Super Bowl championship since then and a Super Bowl appearance and look to be one of the better teams. I don't know what's going to happen tomorrow or later on today, I should say, on Sunday. Maybe they've won, maybe they've lost by the time you hear this video. I don't know when I'm gonna release it. Maybe I'll release it on Sunday, we'll see. But the Eagles were able to eventually have success, and Andy Reid was eventually having success afterwards, even though he didn't win a championship with the Eagles. Took him to a Super Bowl, didn't win. Tomlin obviously has won. Some people would say with cowards players, that's not, untrue. But he also took another team there. And let's also be honest, a lot of his teams got kind of ruled out of the league. If you go back to those early 10s Steelers teams, they were pretty violent. And the rules committee and the NFL kind of made that way of defense outlawed. And Tomlin was still able, though he hasn't had the best defense every year, to become a pretty good defensive coach even since then and put up some really good defenses, or put together some really good defenses since then. And that said, another playoff loss. All that said, another playoff loss. So that's why I think it's time to move on. I thought it was time to move on last year. I thought it was time to move on. I don't think he's a terrible coach, and I don't think he's mediocre. Let me get into that now. You Pittsburgh fans, not all of you, again, I think it's time to move on. If you're a Pittsburgh fan who's like, hey, Tomlin's had his day, it's time for him to go somewhere else and for Pittsburgh to go through a rebuild, because that's one thing they haven't done. They haven't gone through a full rebuild. That's fine. But when I hear and I see Pittsburgh fans use the term mediocre or average, talk to a Jets fan, a Giants fan, a Lions fan 16, 17 months ago before last season. We're still the most losses since 2000. I think we're number 2, despite only 2 losses this year. A Raiders fan, a Jacksonville Jaguars fan, hell, your own division, the Cleveland Browns. There's that jersey, I'm sure some of you have seen it on social media, with all the different quarterbacks Cleveland's had since 1999, since they came back after the whole Baltimore fiasco. It's another can of worms for another day. There's countless other franchises, even the Carolina Panthers. Countless other franchises that have not been to the playoffs every year the past 16 years, have nothing but winning seasons. Even the Buffalo Bills before a few years ago, right? There's a lot of franchises who had to endure a lot of garbage. Are you ready? I said, are you ready to suck? Are you ready for that, Pittsburgh? Thinking this is average. Comparing him to Doc Rivers. I've seen that online too. NFL coaching and NBA coaching ain't the same. Let's be honest. A lot of these NBA coaches don't deserve the job. And hey, if there is an issue, if there's another similarity to Andy Reid and maybe a dissimilarity at the same time, is that Tomlin's a specialist. Tomlin is a defensive specialist. Andy Reid's obviously an offensive specialist. Andy Reid has always kept great defensive coaches and defensive coordinators to help him focus more on the side that he's good at. And that's one of Tomlin's Achilles heel. Whether it's Matt Canada, whoever it is, a lot of the offensive coordination he's gotten has not been good. A lot of quarterback play he gotten also has not been good. Look at Ben Roethlisberger, one of the most overrated quarterbacks of all time. His last 10 years, basically. If he played close to a full season, he gave up 10 picks at least. That's what he did for Tomlin. Even those years with Juju and AB in their prime, he was still throwing a lot of picks. And then, of course, Mitch Trubisky, Kenny Pickett, and now the shadow known as Russell Wilson. He hasn't had the best quarterback play. He hasn't had the best coordinators. That's on him. He's not able to address his weakness on, the side of the ball he's weakest. That's his biggest Achilles heel. That's why they're not able to give over the hump. But he's a good coach. He's a good defensive coach. And he's had unprecedented success. Shit, even the Dallas Cowboys, their once rival, haven't had the success Tomlin has. So cool it on the average or mediocre stuff. You guys have no fucking clue. You've had 3 head coaches my entire life. Fuck, 3 head coaches my entire mom's life. You know what I'm saying? You guys don't know what it's like to fail. Stop being babies. It's okay to want Tomlin to move on and want to start. Are you ready to hire a fat Patricia, a Adam Gase, one of these goofy ass coaches, a Urban Meyer, a Bobby Petrino? The OGs may remember him for Atlanta. Are you ready to hire some of these type of goofy ass coaches? Are you ready to potentially go 5-10 playoff list years, Pittsburgh? I don't think you really are. I think you're talking a big game. Oh, Tomlin, every year, But I don't think you really are staring down the barrel of what it's like to be an average NFL franchise. I think, listen, I'm not saying it's not time to move on. It probably is. He needs a change of scenery. But some of you fans, I don't think you know what you're signing up for. You're not signing up to guarantee go to the playoffs next year. Hey, maybe you will. Maybe you find a guy. A lot of franchises want my guy, Ben Johnson. But Ben didn't leave last year. Now, it's an open secret. He wanted the Chargers job. And shout out to another Michigan man who also lost today, by the way. Harbaugh, he got that job, and Ben didn't really care about any other job. Maybe the Pittsburgh job is the one. Every other franchise seems to think they're going to get Ben Johnson. The Jags and the Bears really think they're going to get Ben Johnson. There's only one Ben Johnson. I don't know if cloning technology has advanced, but there's only one of them. So only one franchise can go. I don't think he's just going to go in a bad situation. So maybe Pittsburgh, if they do fire Mike Tomlin, maybe that's the guy. Maybe that's the situation he goes to. Where obviously he doesn't have a Jared Goff there. I mean, I'm not sure what Justin Fields can do. I thought Chicago moved on to him prematurely, and we've seen a lot of quarterbacks who were moved on prematurely, whether it's Baker, Darnold, Geno Smith, amongst others, have renaissances elsewhere. So maybe Justin Fields can do that under somebody like Ben Johnson. Who knows? Maybe even Russell can do better under Ben Johnson. I think the roster would still have to be overhauled, but there's something there. There's something there. So maybe this is the situation where you can get Ben Johnson. I don't know. I don't know what he wants. I don't know if he'll leave. He might not leave. It depends what happens with us. Me and the Lions. I say us like I'm playing. Doesn't every fan do that? And as far as Tomlin, I mentioned Jacksonville. Maybe that's the place he can go. A franchise, like I said, who hasn't enjoyed success. I mean, they had the Saxonville era. Back in the day, they had the Brunell era. They had the Maurice Jones-Drew era, too. A little bit after that. But, they are not a pinnacle franchise, right? They miss the playoffs way more often than they make it. They do have a quarterback, Trevor Lawrence, who I've never really been sold on ever since I used to live in the Carolinas and he was at Clemson. I've always thought he was overrated, but he is a well-regarded quarterback, and they have something there. There's something in Jacksonville. Maybe Tomlin can go there, resurrect that franchise, and get a little bit more appreciation for what he is. Getting a franchise that otherwise hasn't had that much success, at least overall. Like I said, they've had their stretches of being relevant, but maybe Tomlin can go there, get a little bit more appreciation from the Jacksonville faithful. And then maybe Pittsburgh can get a Ben Johnson in there. Maybe both sides can do better than what they're doing. I'm not saying it's not possible. It can happen. I don't know. But what do you think? You tell me.